This recording's for Thursday, June 6th, 2024. And here, what we're going to go again for our 2024 June release. We're going to go over, we're going to do our complete code walkthrough. So on Tuesday, we went over the front end and we did and had a demo of the current features. For this video, we're going to do a system review of the entire project, and then we're going over the back end. But one day I wanted to update this. You'll have this drawing here. It's an update of what we have so far. So right now, the end user is still, of course, the end user, and you're still seeing a client that's using the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React technologies, the front end technologies. That code is in the front end folder. Now, I kind of represented things a little bit differently here, is that Python-EL is a library that we're using to communicate the client to the local server. It's not the typical REST API, request response. Even though Ollama can do that, we're not using that. We're actually using this library called Python-EL that enables you to do something interesting, that you can define functions in the Python server that could be directly run to the client. You can define functions in the client in JavaScript that could be run in the server. Why this is possible is that we're not building. This is a native desktop app. We're not building a web app that's deployed on a server. This is something that's going to be executed as a desktop app. So there's really only one server and one client. And so this Python-EL library, which I'll talk about in a little bit, gives you the ability to directly communicate by executing actual functions that defined in one area that can be run in the other area, which makes communication efficient. So Python-EL is a library that connects these two together, and then it's this local server, right? The file name is still in backend/main.py. It connects to the database through a data layer that we have /backend/db, that we have now a folder because we have multiple files. We have multiple modules that connect to different tables in the database. We now have a chat database, a chat table, I should say, and a message table, which I'll actually talk about after this. So these files connect to the SQLite by way of ORM, or Object Relational Mapping library called Peewee. And we moved from using direct SQL queries to using the object relational model mapping. Is that because I wanted to be able to show in code, and you'll see this, is that the ability of using native Python objects to represent things in the database back and forth. We still want the abstraction of the data layer, but it really makes it easy when especially if your data model is not so complicated, to be able to use an ORM. It makes it easy to use native, Python objects to represent the database as opposed to writing SQL queries. This is a choice. But I think that especially when we're focusing on application, it's a good choice to have when it comes to like understandability and readability of your code for the most part. There's pros and cons we can talk about later. Our database, though, we're just using a SQLite database. It gives us the ability to have a single file that's actually our database, not to run another service like MySQL or Postgres in order to do this. And it's called DataDB in our local, like within the project. Now, going back to the local server here, which is written in Python. Now, in order to connect to the LLM, there is we use this called Ollama SDK that connects to the Ollama LLM package manager. Ollama is this really cool package manager that lets you download LLM models like they're it's a similar concept that we've seen in other places, like for Docker containers, to be able to download an image and be able to run a container from it, or what we use in this project, npm, Node package manager, to be able to download Node modules by saying npm build, or using npm install in order to install a package. You can install an LLM that way. The cool thing also is that through this SDK, which I'll talk about a bit, you can programmatically pull and interact with the LLM as well directly. Before, remember in the beginning, we were using LangChain, but then we just realized how much extra stuff is in LangChain and it was just kind of like more than what we would need or want for what we're trying to build here. So we just used the SDK that Olama came out with probably a few months ago. It seems to be very succinct and very like what we needed. And so, in my opinion, if you can find a library that directly settles your use case and doesn't have all the extra stuff, sometimes it's good to go with that, especially at first, in order to to eliminate additional variables that can go wrong. But nonetheless, so Olama handles our package manager, something we download separately. Actually, it's this thing here that you can see in my Mac OS setup. And we are now not using Tiny Llama, we're using Llama 3. It's bigger. Tiny Llama was like 700 megabytes. Llama 3 is at 4.7 gigabytes. This came out probably I think in April or May, I forget when, very recently. But it's a really big upgrade from Llama 2. So I was like, hey, and I've talked to some of the Keiko Exchange developers here that like they were able to run this on their laptops, not a problem. So we changed it to this. So, and we were getting some good responses for that. But over here, this is our current, system design setup. I wanted to put this in the back end video because the back end involves a lot of the sections here. We went over this front end, but we're gonna go over the rest of this stuff in this video. So there's a couple things I wanted to mention is we have Python EO, Olama SDK, and Peewee ORM. I want to look into these ones really quickly. So for Python EO is right here. So it has this library to making simple Electron-like offline HTML, GS GUI apps. Electron is also another framework, or that you can say, that enables you to use web technologies to build a native app. But I wanted to do something lightweight, so I found this library. So essentially what happens is that you write you model your folder, your project like this. And once you do, you say, and they'll eel.init web, and web is whatever the name of the folder that has all of your HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And once you say start and you specify the HTML, it literally, pops up a window using Chrome or whatever base browser that you're using, and that is your interface. So, sorry, I'm a web person. I'm a full stack person. I really didn't feel like learning like some native, Mac or PC GUI thing, or maybe find some cross-platform stuff. I'm just like, I know web technologies. Can I use something that opens, uses web technologies and don't use the front end? So that's what I was looking for. So therefore, this is what I found. And it works pretty well. The big thing here is that you have the ability to say, hey, listen, this Python function that I put in Python, expose it so that I can run it in my JavaScript front end. And then you're going to see I can take something like a function I run in JavaScript, and I can expose it and run it in my Python files. This is so powerful because it's remember, this is a native desktop app. This is not a web app that's deployed on some machine in AWS or some cloud somewhere. And so one client one server is servicing thousands of clients and blah, blah. That's not true. It's one-to-one. Every person that runs Personal-LLM is going to have its own server, and it's going to have its own client, and they're going to be in the same computer. So if you're going to do that, you might as well take advantage of this opportunity instead of building an entire web app. One of them is that, hey, we can actually make it so that you can execute functions in either way, and it actually runs pretty well. So that's what you're going to see more in the back-end application of this. So that's Python EO. Now, another thing I wanted to show is the Olama Python library, this ability of now Python connecting to the LLM directly. So you can import Olama, and you can basically use these direct functions. Like this is actually what we use. You're going to see that we use this in the backend code. Basically, I'm saying importing llama, and I'm saying, hey, chat, here are all the messages that come from the user. Give me the response, you know? And it's a really awesome. And actually, we actually use this because we do the streaming equals true. You can get the chunks so that you'll see. That's how you get the whole ability of getting like all the information that comes from the like as it comes from the LLM. You can put it into Scream so that it's like not just waiting for like a number of seconds or minutes before you get the whole response. You can get the response in tokens. So that's something we use. So this is something. This is what we use in order to interact with the Tiny Llama, not Tiny Llama, Llama 3 LLM. For the database, we switch to Peewee or ORM, which gives us the ability to like to design tables in this way as classes. You'll see like class, person, name, birthday. This is a table in the database. But because we're using an object relational model as opposed to like using raw, connecting to it directly with SQL, we have this ability to like define tables and also make operations of tables. Hold on. Here, create tables, create like a person through native Python functions. So this is really important. Even though we still have the data layer abstraction, it's really helpful sometimes, in a lot of cases, to be able to use native Pythonic or whatever language you're using, classes and variables and functions in order to operate with the database, so it's easier to be able to to jump in. Also, one of the cool things about using the ORM is that if for whatever reason we decide to swap out SQLite for something else, we basically probably don't do much but like change the driver or change like how we're specifying how the database is instantiated. Once we do that, the ORM usually will handle anything you need to switch to a database. So that's always nice as well. So the last thing I want to talk about is that you have this database here, which has tables. So here is the data model that we currently have now. You just have two tables now instead of one. We have a message table, which has all of the messages that you send to the LLM. ID, the role, is it user, from you, or is it from assistant from the LLM? The content, which is the content there. And we have a created at, so I added a created at just so that we know when the message is done. But now we have a chat ID, which is a foreign key field that connects to the chat table, which has an ID, name, and created at. And the whole idea is every message must have and be associated with the chat. This is how we're putting the groundwork to have multiple chats that have its own message history. I haven't done the front end yet. I did the back end, but I haven't done the front end yet at this time. So therefore, that's why we have the model ready, but the front end is not, but the front end hasn't exposed the functionality yet. But this is the current data model, and next week we're actually gonna start building the front end for multiple chats.